When it comes to weight loss, many of us tend to focus very intently on caloric intake, or we focus on a subset of what we're eating, whether it's fats or sugars or carbs, whatever is, in fashion at the moment. However, it turns out that mastering our weight to find the ideal balance for our body actually is not strictly dependent on what we're eating. We also need to look at the connection between how we're thinking about what's going on and how we achieve our desired results. Today, I am delighted to be speaking with Jaylin Knight. She is a mindset mental fitness coach, and she's going to be breaking it down for us so we can all learn how to get better at achieving our health and wellness goals. Jaylin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to talk with you about this because you and I have talked before, and I really feel like this is a missing piece for so many people. We get all caught up in the idea of caloric intake or specific dietary protocols or those kinds of things, but we don't talk about the mindset that comes along with it. Can you share with us for, just a second what we're looking for when we're trying to prepare ourselves mentally to achieve these kinds of goals?
Yeah, and kind of the short answer is that really just we want to aim at things that actually feel good to us both physically and emotionally. And so many things like you mentioned about the caloric intake and like just all that diet words like as soon as you hear the word diet, which diet in of itself is just what we're eating, right? But the word diet to us has so many negative connotations, right? And it starts to feel like restriction and all the things you can't do and all the foods you can't eat and all the things you're going to miss out on, right? And so
Mhm.
all of those things, like, what emotions does that generate for you? For me, I'm like, like, I don't wanna do any of that.
I know,
Right?
and, it's interesting because I'm reminded all of a sudden of a cartoon from many, many years ago, Garfield, the big fat orange cat,
Sure.
said, "Diet is die" with a T on the end of it.
Right? And so but, I mean, just think about it, like, going into something like that, you're already flooded with tons of negative emotions, and negative emotions are going to have an effect on what actions you're going to take. So, are you likely to continue doing things that are generating negative emotions for you?
That's
That's
such a
why
good
we fall off
point.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really a good point. So, I'm just curious, how does mental fitness help with weight loss?
Yeah. So, in a number of ways, but in general, mental fitness is really just about training your brain to think positively, even when you're handling challenges. And
Mm,
so we're so you like our brains are naturally wired for survival, right? They much more cared about that we live another day versus that we wear a certain pant size. And so, right. And so when it's about survival, it's always about looking for the negative. What's going to kill us? Where do we need to look at next? And so
mm,
that's our automated behaviors. And so as we grow up with that, we just get so used to that that's just what it is. And a lot of times it's going to sound like the judgment in your head, right? Whether we're judging ourselves or judging others or judging circumstances, but it's all that negative feedback about this is hard. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. And mental fitness is learning how to quiet that judge and then
mhm,
get in touch with who you really are. So, who you really are is this beautiful being, right? This pure intelligence, inner wisdom, all light. And that's every one of us has this. And I refer to it as the intuition, soul, whatever it is you want to call it. But that's who we really are. And we can just get so like trained out of feeling that side of ourselves because we get bogged down with the day to day that adds on more. Like once you're looking for judgment, you can find things to judge easily.
and we are so prone to that. I think we tend to be so supportive of other people, very encouraging if someone else is on this path, but the minute we're trying to achieve that, somehow we develop all of this negative self-talk. So
Yeah.
how do we learn to shift that to a more positive frame?
Well, so I actually work with a systematic framework from positive intelligence, and they teach us how to really quiet those negative voices in our head. They teach us different mindfulness exercises, which we'll get into, but just ways that you can really pull yourself back to the present moment, like really simply. And then once you're in that present moment, you've taken a break from the negative judgment. Again, you can get into your sage and really feel who you are. And your sage has so much empathy for you. And
Mhm.
I talk with my ladies all the time about like, yes, let's talk about empathy. And they're like, oh, I feel empathy for people all the time. I'm like, I'm sure you do. What about for you? Like, what? I like,
Yeah.
so the idea that we're gonna treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would treat our friends.
Mm. And so how does the shift into that more positive mindset, how can that help us? I'm assuming it helps us achieve the goal, but does it also help us sustain the goal?
Absolutely. Because from a more positive mindset, so one, you start to make more positive connotations with the types of things that you're doing that are going to help you promote weight loss. So, I mean, if you have weight to lose, then you are going to have to make changes, right? Because if nothing
Mhm.
changes, nothing changes. But you can make changes that actually feel good to you. So, when you're coming from a positive mindset and using curiosity, then you're not just eating something because it's healthy, but you're finding things that are healthy, have nutrients that you actually enjoy and that actually feel good in your body, both mentally or both physically and emotionally. Right. And so same thing with exercise. You're not exercising because it's a punishment, it's something you have to do. Right. That's the quickest way to quit doing that. I tell all of my people, like, don't do anything you hate doing. They're like, wait, I don't
Yeah.
have to do this exercise I hate doing. I'm like, absolutely not. But I do need you to get curious and find ways that you want to move your body that feel good to you and activities you can look forward to. And a lot of times it's about changing the way you see a certain thing. Like, let's just take squats, for instance. Like, you might not love squats, but you might recognize how much that they give your leg strength and help you get
Mm.
up from when you're down and how much it's going to help you as you're aging. And I'll never forget one of my very first personal training mentors. She's like, yeah, I don't train people to look good in jeans. I train them to get off the toilet. I'm like, that's stuck.
And I think that's so important is to find a reason why instead of the because I wanna lose 10 pounds mentality, because that's not gonna help you get to where you wanna go.
Well, even think about it. Like, you're not always, when you're successful in your goals, you're not always going to want to lose 10 more pounds. Like, you're going to get to your goal. So, if that was your motivation, what motivation do you have to keep doing it once you've already gotten there? Versus if your motivation is to do these things because they feel good to me and do these things because they give me energy and I get to thrive and I'm just feeling great and I'm more positive and more, just feel more myself, right? Well, you want to keep doing that forever, right?
Yeah, and I can see, listening to you and listening to the things that you're sharing, I can see how we can also get a little more granular with that, where we're possibly learning how to change some habits. For example, if you're someone who is really, really attracted to salty, crunchy, you know, carby snacks, learning how to shift that, or someone who perhaps eats more sugar than they'd like, to figure out ways to find positive reframes to not get so stuck
Yeah.
in those habits without beating yourself up and going, "Oh, I'm a loser, so I might as well just eat this entire bag of M&Ms."
Exactly, exactly. So again, getting curious and finding other things that are going to satisfy you
Mhm.
similarly, right? Maybe not the same of these because you have so many extra connections to that comfort and the history that you've had with that. But if you really start to think about it, like when you eat all those salty chips, does that feel good in your body? Does it feel
Mhm.
good physically? Does it feel good emotionally? Are you saying nice things to yourself after you eat that? So, like, when you really start to think about how it feels, it doesn't usually pan out as well as you thought it might when you got started, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's that initial good enjoyment and fulfillment from it, right? And we get that little dopamine hit, and so all of that makes sense about why we would want it. But when you really start to pay attention and get curious about how you feels for you after you've had it, and then do the same thing with other types of food that you enjoy. Like, again, I don't recommend anybody eat things that they don't. Confession, I do not eat salads. I hate salads. I'm not going to eat them. I know that there's so much nutrients and so many ways that you can have them. I don't like it. But there are so many things that I absolutely love, and I would choose over chips and things like that because they feel good in my body, because I like the way that they give me energy, because I like the way that they keep me satiated for several hours and I don't want to keep going for food afterwards. I like that feeling. And so those kind of focusing on food in that way can really change the way that you're thinking about different foods.
And I can imagine that that kind of mental shift, that mindset mastery also applies to things like, you mentioned working out. True confession, I struggled for years before I found something that worked for me because I am not a go to the gym and do rah-rah classes, kind of thing.
Fair enough.
Uh, but, finding something was great, but that can also, once you learn those skills, it can be applied to other areas of your life. For example, learning how to sleep better or prioritizing self-care time or those kinds of things. Is that true?
100%. And that's what I love so much about the mental fitness is because it really up levels your whole life. And so again, like we're focusing on the root cause and the emotions, and we're focusing on you being nicer to yourself. So when you're
Mhm.
nicer to yourself, are you going to try to force yourself to live off 4 hours of sleep? Or are you going to take the rest that you absolutely deserve? And then
Yeah.
again, paying attention to how you feel. How do you feel after 4 hours of sleep? Do you feel rejuvenated and ready to take on the day? Or do you feel tired and sluggish and want to go eat the chips again because you need a quick pick me up? And then that doesn't feel good. And then those continue down a different momentum downwards. But when you're lifting everything up and you're recognizing how much you deserve to feel good, and you absolutely do, everybody deserves to feel their best. But when you get little glimpses of that and really focus on how good that feels, it makes you want more of that. So it becomes so much more natural and your whole life up levels.
That's really wonderful. So I'm just curious, when you're working with someone, what is the time framework that's needed to kind of begin to see some sort of result and to be able to learn how to make that shift? I imagine it sounds like that's not always that easy to do.
And it can be challenging for sure. I mean, just thinking about it, we have so many years of thinking the way we've been thinking, doing things the way we've been doing, right? We've built up so much momentum in that. But our brains are magnificent and they're capable of change, but it does take some work.
Yeah.
And so for me, we have the positive intelligence program is 6 weeks of really focusing on how to go in and rewire the brain. And then we do another 6 weeks on really putting that towards how we're going to use it for weight loss and bringing in a lot more of the strategy that we're adding onto it. But in terms of when you notice that change and when you feel better, I would say within the first week. Then the first week, my client's like, I've never
Mhm.
thought of it this way. I've never seen it like this. I've never felt like this. And so those are magnificent shifts. And of course, it's new. So we need to continue practicing that so that we can rewire it into the brain and it overwrites the other ways that we've been thinking for many, many years, decades even.
And that's such a wonderful thing to think that with supported effort, in just 1 week, you can begin to learn to make those shifts, and I
Oh,
imagine it just
absolutely.
keeps getting better and better the longer
Yeah.
you go along.
Yeah.
That's really great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jaylin. This has really been such an interesting look at how our brains work and some of the things we can do. Right before we hopped on, you mentioned that you had a little end food guilt gift that you wanted to offer. Can you share with us about that?
Yes, absolutely. I created a free download for your watchers or listeners to end the food guilt. And it just shows you some very simple mindfulness techniques that you can use right before you eat. It's just 10 seconds of getting your mind present and centered, and it'll change your eating experience. Promise.
Wow, that sounds really great. Okay, folks, I'm going to put the link down below to that free gift. Thank you, Jaylin, for that. That sounds wonderful. And I'll also put her website down below for you to be able to reach out to her if this is something that is appealing to you and you want to learn and know more. Jaylin, thank you so much for being here. It was fabulous to talk with you.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, I appreciate all of your knowledge and wisdom and your sharing. For everyone who is watching, please make sure you check the links down below. And remember, as always, in all you do, make today a healthy day. Bye, folks.